Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Casey Scherer, or you could say Scherer. Casey is the younger brother of Jason Scherer, King of the Hammers champion. But Casey has his own championships that we can talk about, and his life and some of the things that led him out of the Bay Area, up into the Sierra Nevada foothills, and then to St. George, Utah. So let's say hello. And, Casey, thank you for coming on and being a guest.
Hey, Big Rich, thanks for having me, man. I love listening to your podcasts, and I'm happy to be able to join you and be involved in one myself.
That's awesome. So let's just jump right in with both feet.
Sure.
If anybody listened to Jason's, they're going to have, this might be kind of a repeat, but the hometown that you were born and raised in is...
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Danville, California, where my parents built, and we lived in my parents' dream house. So it was really fun to grow up with my brother and have all the fun things that we got to do in the shop there growing up. So
let's talk about that house. I don't think we got into that with Jason. The shop that you just mentioned, was it like just a garage, or was it a shop?
Yeah, no, it was a garage that my parents parked their cars in, and my brother bought a CJ5, and he played with it a little bit. He went to college up in Chico, and the Jeep actually got stolen. And I think you guys covered that in his segment.
Yep.
And then he came home to help my dad run the business a little bit, family business, and they decided to do a full frame off restoration on it. And I loved it. I was the kid sweeping the shop floor, and it wasn't anything special. It was just a 2-car garage that my dad kind of relinquished his parking spots and let Jason, completely do a frame off on a CJ5, which was back then, to us just getting into it, it was a big deal, rebuilding the motor and cleaning up the frame rails and truss and everything. It was a lot of fun stuff, a lot of good memories.
That's awesome. That's a great way to get involved, or to build that passion of vehicles.
Oh, we were hooked.
Yeah,
we were hooked. There's no doubt. I mean, I can look back at pictures, and there's camping gear all over the driveway coming back from the Rubicon, and my dad would come home from work, and there's coolers and sleeping bags and stuff everywhere. It was just, we lived it. It was, as soon as we got done with school, it was back to working on off-road stuff.
Let's talk about the early years, school.
Yeah.
Were you scholastic, athletic, or tried to find your own thing?
Yeah, I tried to find my own thing. Jason was really scholastic and athletic. I kind of bounced around. I had some learning disabilities and stuff like that. And I bounced around to a bunch of different schools, all the way, even in high school. I got kicked out of high school for having long hair. We, went to an all boys Catholic high school, and they just didn't approve of Casey's ways. So I ended up, registered myself at the public school, and it was great. I had friends on both campuses. So definitely, Casey knew how to have some fun back then.
Yeah, I know the long hair story. I grew up in my youth was truly in the 60s, and then 70s was high school. And long hair was like a norm.
Yeah, it was kind of taboo, I at an all boys Catholic high school, I wore, I was really into the Grateful Dead and wore tie-dyed t-shirts every day, and went to a bunch of concerts, Grateful Dead concerts, when I was just a youngin'. Jason would let me tag along, and he was always so cool that way as an older brother to let me tag along. A lot of siblings are, get away, and we had a lot of the same friends and same interests. So that was an interesting part of my youth.
Well, that's awesome. It's interesting that two brothers can be so different. I know that my kids, Megan and Rich, are extremely different. And so no matter how you raise them or where you grow up or what the influences are, people still have their own destiny to make.
For sure. My brother and I get confused constantly. We have, like I said, a lot of the same attributes, and we have this very similar voice, and people confuse us quite often, but we're quick to jump on them and say, no, Jason's my older brother, or Casey's my little brother, vice versa. It's pretty funny. We kind of, it fuels us. It's fun.
So let's talk about, you've actually been talking about it, but besides school, early family life, your dad started Pelican Communications and ran that, and then Jason helped, and then you're involved with it now too, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm a Western Regional Sales Manager and an owner of the business. So yeah, kind of from the beginning, I think one of my very first jobs was my grandfather giving me a sledgehammer, and he told me to break up. He owned a company called Oakland Cigarette Service, and Jason and I would tag along with my dad, who worked for my grandpa, and we'd go to the warehouse, and I used that sledgehammer, and I would break up vending machines, cigarette vending machines, and fill the dumpsters with them, because they were converting their routes from cigarette machines to amusement devices, which are like pool tables and jukeboxes.
Okay.
And it just kind of spiraled from that. My dad, many years later, went on his own, started his own business, and started with pay telephones. Yeah. And
now there's a piece of history.
They are, they're few and far between to see them, but when you do, they're out there still, believe it or not. A few of them. Another one of my first jobs was counting quarters. My dad had a route, and he'd go collect the quarters out of them, and I'd count all the coins and take them down to the bank, and over the years he kept me employed. I helped my brother install, I think, somewhere around 3,000 payphones.
Wow.
From pouring cement pads and hammer drilling them, lagging them into the ground, and running phone lines. And it was all Jason that taught me all these things. So it was really fun. I at a young age, I had a great work ethic. I enjoyed it because I got to work with my brother and my dad. It was just fun. And I still have that same attitude to this day, that I get to work with my family. There's ups and downs on that, but in the big picture, it's well worth it. We all really enjoy what we do.
Well, that's great to hear. So your wheeling was started with your brother.
Yep.
With that CJ5, correct?
Yeah. So I think maybe we went a little bit too far. So let's back up for a second.
Okay.
Mitch. The way I got into wheeling was, again, I was tagging along with my brother, going with one of his family friends. And then we had a gate to our driveway. and it broke one day. Some of the metal broke, and my parents hired this handyman to come and fix the gate. I think this is like early 90s, and it was Jeff Mello, like
Oh,
it was the Jeff Mello. And, he's a hero of mine because of it. He was actually using a bunch of batteries, and he was arc welding the gate back together and fixing some of the ornaments, ornamentary style gate stuff. And he saw my brother's Jeep that he was rebuilding in the garage, and it clicked. It was just, from then on out, it was spending nights over at Jeff's barn, working on his race Jeeps and rock crawlers. And he was doing arena cross. And I was enthralled by it. I'd ride my bike over there every day to learn something. And he was cool about it. He was like, here, pick up a grinder, use the welder. Here's how you sharpen a drill bit. He wasn't shy about it. And it taught us a lot back then. Yeah, really fun to be able to meet Jeff. And then again, it was going out on the trail on Rubicon and Fordyce, and meeting people that had like interests. And still to this day, like guys that we met out on the trail, like Brian Ferris, still work in my brother's shop and set up differentials. I mean, it's been a lifelong friendship.
well, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
you also got into racing go-karts. When did that happen?
That happened a little bit later. I went to a trade school out in Arizona called UTI, which was a heavy diesel and industrial school. And I went to Bob Bondurant's School of Driving out there in Phoenix, and got into a shifter cart. And it was just a school, and I went out and I ran faster lap times than the instructors did. and they were like, you got to get into this sport. So I graduated school, and I came back home, started working for my dad again. And it's funny, I'm actually looking at a picture in my office right now of my dad giving me my very first go-kart. And yeah, just got into it big time. Started traveling all over the country, racing with a couple of buddies, and got picked up by some big sponsors, by some manufacturers. And then the next thing I know, I had factory sponsorships, and I was traveling all over the world, going to Guatemala, raced down in San Salvador and Nicaragua. I kept going back to Guatemala, made a bunch of friends over there, and they kept inviting me back to race in their series and kind of help them bring that type of level of racing to Guatemala, where now go-kart racing is just absolutely massive over there. And I like to think that I had a part in making it as big as it is today over there.
That's cool. I knew that you had raced, and I knew that you had factory sponsorship, and I knew that you'd gone out of the country to race too. Didn't you also race against some big name guys that ended up being NASCAR drivers?
Oh yeah, man, all those guys. I mean, the Scott Speeds, AJ Allmendinger was one of my teammates. My buddy Andrew Alfonso went on to race, Porsche and Le Mans style stuff. Billy Johnson, who was another one of my teammates. It's just crazy. I could go on and on about all the names of guys that were involved that are now in the limelight of professional racing. I see, the McDowell's family are just out there just killing it in NASCAR right now, and Gaskell's, all those guys that I raced go-karts with, they've done very well for themselves. So if there's any advice to kids out there listening to this podcast, get yourself into a go-kart and dig in, because you can, if you put your head down to it, anything is possible. You can work your way all the way up to the top, all the way into Formula One. I mean, Max Verstappen is one of the top Formula One drivers right now. And, I used to see him at the go-kart track all the time. He was just a little kid. So you just put your face down and practice, drive, learn the go-kart setup, learn how the thing works. And, good luck.
I understand it's a great way to get into racing. I guess a lot of guys, they segue into more open wheel racing.
Sure. I think it taught me a lot, Rich.
Yeah.
It taught me disciplines. It taught me how to respect other racers and how to drive. It taught me line theory and braking thresholds, and how to set up a chassis, and how to not smoke my tires in the first couple laps. And I mean, there's so many little things that later in my life, racing off road, I think it was a huge benefit for me. And it's one of the reasons why I think that when I jumped into racing UTVs with Ultra 4, that I came right out of the box and won the championships and got Rookie of the Year, because it was my skill set played right into it.
Right.
It was, and I had Coach Jason there to teach me along the ways of some of the differences, and how to set up an off-road car versus a road car, which there is big differences, but there's also a lot of similarities.
Right. Well, yeah, and I would imagine one of the things that I've heard is that, especially with shifter karts, is the feel. You get to, because you're so, there's very little space between you and the pavement, that the car feels different.
You have to drive. I mean, you touch the brakes, and if your elbows aren't locked in, your head's hitting the steering wheel. You drive by the seat of your pants, and you learn how a car reacts in bad situations. You get in the marbles a little bit, and that you're going to have understeer, and you go way too hard into the brakes. That thing's going to push like a boat and just keep going straight. You gotta learn that finesse. And it took me a little bit in off-road. I'd come into a corner racing a NorCal rock race or something, and I'd try and slow the car down, and it would just keep going straight because you're in dirt. There's no grip. So, there was a lot of stuff that took me a long time to figure out. Luckily, I lived near Prairie City. When I moved up to Auburn, when I moved out of the Bay Area, out of Danville, and so I was there all the time. I mean, I think the gate guy knew me by my first name.
Yeah, it's a good track out there too. I had something to do with that when I owned Vora.
Oh, nice.
Me and a guy named Steve Sullivan, and actually we even had Kurt LeDuc come up one time and run the race course that we used for Vora. Oh yeah, and it's funny, we were in in his wife's Grand Cherokee. And he drove up from San Jose because he was there for Four Wheel Parts Truck Fest or whatever they called it.
Uh-huh.
And I'd asked him to come out and take a look at the track. And then he brought his sons up and raced with us and stuff for a while. But we did the track in the Grand Cherokee with the three of us, and I thought we would just drive around the track. No, he was driving. I mean, we were off the jumps. We were sliding through the corners, and I'm like, okay, I guess I should trust this guy because he knows what the hell he's doing. So, it was fun.
I really like Kurt LeDuc. I've had the pleasure of hanging out with him and meeting him when my brother started racing with Ford. Jason made friends with Kurt on trail emissions through BF Goodrich, and they became really good friends. And I met Kurt for the first time, and I introduced myself, and the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, I know who you are. I follow you on social media." And my brother looked over at me like, "Oh, Casey." You get a legend like that guy saying something like that to me. It really stuck. Put a big smile on my face.
Yep, that's what off-road racing does. I mean, you get to meet, whether you're racing UTVs or Class 11 Volkswagen Bugs or Class 9 cars or whatever.
Sure.
If you put yourself out there to meet the people that are around, everybody's really, for the most part, personable.
Yeah. I think that's something, and again, I think my brother touched on it a little bit in his segment, but honestly, Rich, I think that's all because of Shannon. I think he taught us that. He taught us to, and he has this famous line, he'll share absolutely everything with you, but he's still going to beat you with his junk.
Yep.
And it has been lost over the years with so many people and how big the sport has gotten. But I think the founders of it still have that humble attitude where it's why the sport's grown so much, in my opinion, is everybody shares these cool new technology. You know, the Joe Thompsons that are building UFO cars, the Campbells, you know, the Cross building his new car. It was, you know, it's not like Cross had all this knowledge. He went in there and got it from a bunch of the veterans, and I see it. It took me a little bit to gain that in the UTV stuff because my background in go-kart racing, it was kind of like how Robbie Gordon is. You know, there was a cover over your car that nobody shared any secrets. Right. And it's like the mind game, where in Ultra 4 and even in rock crawling, you know, growing up around that, it wasn't that way. You know, everybody was sharing their ideas. You know, I see Jesse, you know, building all these portal stuff, and like, you know, he shares his ideas with everybody. It's really cool how it's all. And again, to circle back on it, I really think it came from Shannon teaching all of us that that's the way to do it. And I still am that way. I get phone calls weekly from people, hey, how do I do this, or how's this work? And I love sharing that kind of information.
That's great. That's what helps grow the sport for sure. Because if you got to go out there and figure it all out on your own,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's really time consuming. There's those
Yeah.
days where you're really down. You know, like dirt circle track. I can see how people get into it. And
Yeah.
if you have early success because you've figured it out somehow, or you've got somebody on your team that has figured it out, it's great. But you see guys out there just, you know, struggling for years. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know, dude, you know, you don't know how to set up your car. You don't know, you know, all the things.
Yeah, I dabbled in it for a couple of seasons. I raced the NASCAR Redline series, which was a late model series. Raced, you know, the bull rings like Madera and Stockton 99 Speedway, and I loved it. I thought it was a ton of fun. But again, just like you said, it was, if you didn't have the setup, you were getting dumped. And those guys didn't care. They would dump you. The same guy would dump you every single weekend to teach you a lesson. And it got expensive fast.
Yeah.
Because it was, you know, and I got to the point where I was like, man, the good old boys won't let me buy. You know, you had to beat them fair and square. And then when you started beating them, they Dale Earnhardt, you know, if you couldn't beat them, they beat you. So they were beating on your bumper, and it just wasn't a fit for me. I didn't have that grit. I was too nice of a guy to be able to compete in it. It was fun, but it wasn't what I was striving for in my racing career.
Right. And if you're hot-headed, it's even worse because when somebody dumps you, you know, the next thing you want to do is go into pits. And if you're not a big guy like most of the NASCAR guys, you know, you've got your lead tire change guy is actually a bodyguard.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a fight every weekend. I'm trying to remember when there wasn't one, and I can't. So that's just kind of the mentality of it, and that's the sport. Nothing wrong with it. Those guys, you know, I'm sure they're still doing it to this day, and you know, it was a good time in my life. I did some really fun races too. I did a 25-hour long endurance race up in Thunder Hill.
Uh-huh.
I did it 4 years in a row. It was really fun in a late model stock car. So here you are, 3:00 in the morning, doing 180 miles an hour down the straightaway, and a prototype, you know, GT3 car comes passing you at, you know, 210 miles an hour. It was awesome, you know, and you know, you come down the straightaways and the brakes are glowing and you can see the cars in front of you. It was a ton of fun. I loved that race, and maybe someday I'll be able to be back involved in it because it is such a fun event.
Let's talk about your UTV racing and
Sure.
how that how that evolved. I mean, where did you just wake up some morning and go, okay, I'm going to go race one of these glorified golf carts, or what?
No, well, let's see. So I lived in Danville in the Bay Area, and I was doing the normal routes, working for my family business. And I came home from work one day for lunch. I lived about 2 miles away from our corporate offices, and my house was kind of a revolving door. We had a big swimming pool in the backyard. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, her sister was, Marcy. Her sister was always in and out of town. She lived out here in St. George, and I pulled into the driveway, and there was a little, 4-door Nissan or, Prius type car, smaller hatchback kind of thing. And I just kind of thought to myself, oh, someone's here from out of town, or someone's swimming in the swimming pool. Didn't even think twice about it. And I started to walk up to my front door, and there was a guy standing there pointing a gun at me in my own house. And he said, "Get the F out of here." And I took off running behind my truck, and I jumped a 12 foot tall fence. Can't even believe to this day that I jumped over that fence. And yeah, my house completely got robbed. I'm so lucky to be alive. That guy could have shot me right there. I mean, without a hesitation, he could have shot me. And it turned out it was one of my guns. They had broken into my safe. They had stolen all my wife's purses and jewelry, anything that had any value. They just cleaned house. And that kind of, as sad and as scary as that was, that opened a lot of opportunities. I ended up selling the house. I moved up to Auburn, California, up in the foothills, kind of try to lead a little bit quieter lifestyle, get out of the big city, settle down, ended up getting married. And my neighbor was Phil Blurton, who is a 3 or 4 time Best in the Desert champion, UTV World Championships. I think he's won everything, in my opinion. I think he's got some score races he needs to win, and King of the Hammers might be right on the cusp, but total badass, right?
Yep.
And he said, "Hey, you should get into this UTV racing. I've been racing short course in the Polaris, and there's this new car coming out by Can-Am called a Maverick." And this was in 2017. And I said, "Let's do it." So I went down to the local dealership, and I bought a bone stock Can-Am X3 and took it to his shop. I think it had 2 miles on it, and started sawzalling it. I mean, we, cut it up and built the race car that I actually still have today. And he built a Best in the Desert style car for racing desert, and I built a King of the Hammers style car that had awesome approach and departure angles, and I used every skill set that I had to make that thing just a rock crawler. Put a huge winch on the front of it, started working with different manufacturers, and I went out and raced King of the Hammers for my very first time in 2017, and didn't finish, but had just an epic race. Passed a bunch of guys, had a ton of fun in the rock trails. And, my brother gets on the radio to let me know, "Hey, you're nowhere in contention for a win or anything like that. Just have some fun." And we ended up breaking the car, but, we never gave up. We raced all the way to Resolution, where they kind of looked at me and said, "Okay, your day's done. There, 4,400 cars are now qualifying. You're out." But it was awesome, man. I that first race, I'll never forget it. It was definitely a fun one.
So let's continue talking about the Ultra 4 racing and where that Can-Am led you.
Yeah. So then one day I got I got this idea to call Can-Am and let them know, about some of my successes. I won a race out in Texas, the Vancouver 212, which was in Sierra Blanca.
Yep.
And I don't know if any of the listeners have heard stories about that race, but it was a legendary race. We raced right on the Rio Grande. Sheriff Arvin, who's the famous sheriff for arresting Willie Nelson and Snoop Dogg and a bunch of other people for trying to bring marijuana over into Texas. He was the local sheriff that put the race on with Dave Cole. And that was my first win. And so I took that and I went to Bombardier Can-Am and BRP and ended up getting a factory sponsorship from them. And they helped me out for the whole season, from, parts, helped me with entry fees, all that kind of stuff. So I was just absolutely blown away that I got a factory sponsorship for a UTV company, that I used my skill sets from racing go-karts and knowing how these factories work. It was, it was a relationship, a partnership. It wasn't a sponsorship. I wanted to help promote their product, and look at where they are now, right? They're super involved in Ultra 4 racing.
Right.
I think they're the title sponsor for a lot of different events that they put on. And we just kept that speed, that steam, that like, I don't really know how to explain it, Rich. It was just a drive. I wanted to be involved. I got done with work every day, and that race car got torn down so that I could go to the next race. And went to Stampede, the Metal Cloak Stampede in 2017, and had a pretty rough day. I got dumped really hard in our heat race. The car just got destroyed, and my brother Tom Ways, I think even Lauren, came over to help out. I mean, everybody was thrashing on my UTV to get me into the main event, and I went and had to start from the back because I got crashed out, and I passed everybody. I was just like, I saw red. I had that red mist.
On a mission.
On a mission, and I drove from the back. Won the race, and I came in, and my brother and Dave were at the start finish line where you come in at, up the track there, and they said you won, and I hadn't even been paying attention because all I was doing was driving. I didn't care what place I was in. I was just driving as hard as I could, and they said you won, and it was super fun. I got to get up on the podium and spray champagne for my very first time spraying champagne at an Ultra 4 race. And yeah, it was awesome. Tons of fun. And then we took that speed and we went out to the Fallon and ran the Fallon 250, the PCI Fallon 250. And again, I put together a really good program. Jason came out and supported me out at that race and my whole team. And we ended up pulling off a second. And that second place secured us the championship for the West, the national championship. And then I got to the awards banquet, and I had gotten the Ultra 4 Rookie of the Year, which was, to me, I think it was bigger than the championship. It was, I got the Rookie of the Year of all Ultra 4 racers. It was like, still to this day, just is mind boggling.
Well, yeah, when you jump into upper levels of any racing organization and you win a championship, no matter what kind of vehicle you're driving, that's hard to duplicate as a newbie.
Yeah, it really was. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the partners that I had. They really stepped up. I mean, all of them. It was really fun. It was a fun season. And that sparked a little more interest. I got a random phone call one night from a part manufacturer named Travis Zollinger. And Travis, his first question to me is, I'd love to work with you. What breaks on these cars? and he was a part manufacturer. And so we started developing parts from radius rods to knuckles and tie rods. And, the next thing I know, I'm traveling out to Logan, Utah to go see his facility. And he introduced me to every single one of his employees. And we just started this relationship where I was helping him as a racer, and he was manufacturing these parts, and he built a very successful business. And the next thing I know, him and a couple of his employees and everybody, they're now out racing full speed. I mean, they are committed. They've got trailers and race cars and full teams, and they're all racing 3 or 4 different series. So it's kind of neat that one phone call could turn into getting a whole crew of guys out racing in our sports.
Well, let's dive into that angle. You mentioned not sponsors but partners. I've
Yep.
always been one to I'd rather build a relationship. We call it contact before commerce, and
Correct.
And the whole idea is to build a friendship with somebody or some kind of a personal relationship before they become a partner, before asking them for help with your racing, or in my case, the racing series. It's I go to SEMA, and it's to talk to my current partners and to see the people that I'm interested in working with in the future. Not to walk in and hand them a proposal and go, "Hey, my name is so-and-so, and this is what I do, and here's a proposal. I want you to be a partner." I've never done, well, I did that at the very beginning, and I never was successful. So we started, just walking in and saying, "Hey, I'm Rich Klein. I'm with Cow Rocks or We Rock or Vora or Dirt Riot, whatever it happens to be that I'm interested in getting them involved with."
Yep.
And then I go back the next year. I get their email address so I can send them updates on what we do, post-race emails and that kind of thing, so that they can see that we're legit instead of just some random person walking up with a proposal. So, that's one of the things that I try to instill in racers, and you brought that over, I guess, from having been successful with the go-karts.
Yeah, it was a little bit of that. I think I learned my majority of it, honestly, from the off-road stuff. Charlene Bauer had a lot to do with it. Took her class way back when. I mean, I can still hear Charlene in my head saying, "Put your window net inside your car, not outside your car." So that, when people are taking pictures, that your window net isn't covering up all of your sponsors.
Correct.
Take your sunglasses off, those little types of things. They actually do go a long way. And to your point, Rich, is, one of my biggest sponsors over the year is Cody Wagner from Laser Nut. And I straight up asked him one day, I'm like, "Why are you sponsoring me? Like, what's the deal? Like, is it for exposure or what?" And, his response came back is, "No, man, I think you're cool. Like, you're one of our friends. Like, I want to help support you." And that meant more to me than any corporation or big sponsor, because it was a friend.
Right.
And that happened with ZRP. That happened with Baja Designs. That happened with Bigfoot Winch Ropes. It was all of those like really cool relationships where it wasn't just racing. Also, it was, "Hey, let's go grab beers," or, "Hey, do you want to come do Easter Jeep Safari?" or whatever it may be. It just turned into these friendships that I still have today. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And I can kind of segue some of that into what I'm doing today with Ultra 4 and In Case You Missed It, because maybe I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but
no, go ahead.
I was involved in a really bad accident. I wrecked my UTV in 2019 at the Ultra 4 Nationals up in Reno.
Right.
And that day was a light switch. I lost my factory sponsorship. I got hurt. I lost. It was literally a light switch. It was all games off. No more racing. Doctor's orders. I came over a jump and I cooked it way too hot. And I had some other mechanical issues going on with the car. And when I went off the jump at about 70 miles an hour, the front bumper hit the dirt first. And I went for a ride 8 times. The car went over. Every time the rear tires hit the ground, it was full throttle. And it went and came to rest. And when it came to rest really violently and broke my back, had a burst fracture of the vertebrae. Instantly went to the hospital, went into surgery, had a cage put in, fused a bunch of vertebrae. That was it. There was no more drive for me. Now it was all about my rehabilitation and spending time with my family, because that was the most important thing in my life.
Right. When you face that kind of trauma.
Yeah, there were some dark moments there. When I was in the hospital, I was, and really bad. I couldn't pull myself together. I was just in such a dark place. And my brother's co-driver, Jason Berger, and his brother-in-law, Jesse, came to visit me at the hospital with Tom Ways. But they're, really close family friends. And they said, Casey, let's try and put this negative, bad, horrible thing that happened to you, and let's turn it into a positive. And how do you continue your life and not dwell on this silly situation that happened? And it taught me a lot. I get to spend more time with my family. I get to travel. I don't have to spend so much money on race car parts. The list kept growing on all these like positive things that I was interested in. And it like sparked a whole new interest in my life. It wasn't just race all the time. And I didn't realize that I had turned into that. My wife later told me, that's all you did. You got done with work and boom, you went straight to the shop. I didn't even get how was your day, honey, sometimes. So it's definitely been a blessing. And it kind of it opened my eyes to the world that's out there and the awesome life that I can live.
Right. I think that's one of the things that others can learn without having to go through the traumatic accident that you did, was that, racing or any pursuit of that passion that fuels you, you can't forget about your base. And the base, I mean by family, whatever it is that got you, to where you're at. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that.
Definitely. I think a lot of racers have the same attributes. We have that addictive personality, and we're all very competitive people. I mean, that's why we're out there racing in the first place.
Yep.
And to step back from it once in a while is actually really healthy. I think you don't have to compete in every single race. You can go on a family vacation and regroup and have some better, cleaner ideas in your head on, how you can better your race car or better perform in an event, be more comfortable in the pits, whatever it may be. Sometimes taking a step back from it is a window of opportunity.
Very true. So what are you focusing on, since you said that segue into life after the racing?
Yeah. So life after the racing, I got a phone call from Dave. Dave and I have always had a really funny relationship.
A lot of us can say that.
Yeah, a lot. Definitely. Me being Jason's little brother, he's always kind of messed with me, like, oh, hey, there's Jason's little brother, and it always puts a smile on my face. So, quick little story. One day, Dave was looking for my brother, and my brother was in his motorhome, And I think Jason was in trouble for something. I don't remember what it was, but Dave said, "Get in my golf cart, take me to where your brother is. I need to see him right away." So, I roll up to Jason's motorhome and I jump out of the golf cart real quick and I run up to the door and open the door as fast as I can. And Jason's like, "What?" And I'm like, "The cops are here. The cops are here." And it was just Dave Cole. And we always have had that like silly, funny relationship. A lot of people, don't understand how I can mess around with Dave the way I do and get away with it. And it's strictly because we were friends first before I was a racer, and that relationship has carried on. So Dave called me after my accident, and JT and checked in on me. And then about 2 months later, Dave called me and said, "Casey, I've been thinking about this, and I can't lose you at our events. I need you to come to our events. Your personality is huge. Literally, it's not just the racers, the mechanics, the tire changer, the guys out in remote pits." He's like, "I think you might know more people at this event than anybody does." And so he wanted me to go do segments where I get to go introduce myself to race car drivers and get interviews just off the script, candid, fun stuff. Walk up to Bryce Menzies after qualifying in his T1 truck and have a conversation with him, instead of it being your typical ESPN interview, right?
Right.
Just fun. Make it fun. I mean, I think that's why great announcers, guys like Cameron Steele, John Crowley, those guys are so awesome at what they do, is because they're just themselves. There's no script. There's no BS. It's just, let's go have fun. Let's talk about what's important at the moment. And, people really, really seem to enjoy it. And so Dave and Hammer King Productions hired me to come do these segments that they have on their pay-per-view channel and on their YouTube channel now. So you can go check them out. It's pretty funny stuff, doing interviews with Gomez brothers and talking to Terry Madden and stuff like that. It's awesome. So I've been going to a bunch of the races and doing interviews with people. Went down to Baja a few weeks ago for the El Rey. Got to do a bunch of funny segments, and yeah, it's just turned into me staying in the limelight and enjoying the sport. I don't have to go chase sponsors or anything like that anymore, because it's just for fun. I really enjoy it.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I got to meet, some legends too. I did, interviews with Chris Wiseman and stuff like that, talking about technology, and going over to the Fox booth and talking to Mike Ken and learning about, different technologies in the sport and stuff, where it's kind of missed. People aren't really talking about it unless you pay attention to that specific product. So going and talking to the, guys like Phil Blurton and seeing what they're doing with their race cars, it's really fun, Rich. It's and I like the technology part of it. And I just kind of leave it at that.
Excellent. So let's, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because it's something that Shelley and I've been wanting to do, but the timing hasn't been right because, we've been rock crawling for 21 years. But
yeah.
It's the mountain vibe.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you're, I don't know if you're just a fan or if you're part of that, but the only time I ever see any advertising for it, it's from you. So
yeah.
Talk about that concert and what got you involved.
Yeah. So 11 years ago, my best friend, Alan Drachman, I call him Brother Al because I treat him just like a brother and he treats me like a brother. We were all sitting by a campfire one night, and he had this dream to put on a 3-day concert where we go camping and have a multitude of bands. I'm going here on the 25th to Mountain Vibe Music Festival number 11, and there is I think there's something like 22 or 23 bands playing
Wow.
throughout the 3 days. It's awesome. You camp next to a river. There's a huge stage, and then at night, around 11 o'clock at night on Friday and Saturday night, they have awesome headliners, and he has food vendors, and the bands are awesome. There's everything from bluegrass. You get a solo guy up on stage just playing an acoustic guitar. You get a DJ that comes out and scratches records, and then you get a full punk band, and it's every type of music. It isn't just like going to a Dave Matthews Band concert or a festival for 4 days. It's just a constant flow of different music. And Alan and a bunch of us kind of started it all. And Al's always just had me be involved in it, kind of be a VIP and help with bands and help with parking. And, hey, Casey, can you load up your truck and take a load of trash out to the dumpster? I've always just been involved in it. And it's an awesome event. Last year it didn't happen for obvious reasons.
California, COVID.
Yep. But this year it's going to be bigger than ever. I talked to him the other day. He's sold, more tickets than he ever has. You can check out their website. It's mountainvibemusic.com. And you can actually, it's pretty cool because on the website, you can click onto any of the bands that are listed that are going to be performing and hear their music. So if it's something that, tickles your brain a little bit, you can come out and enjoy it. And it's kid friendly. There's tons of families out there. I'm going solo this year. We got rid of the motorhome, and I'm just going to stay in the pop-up tent. But I'm really looking forward to it. I can't even tell you how much fun it is. It is the bonfire, the drum circles, the people are awesome, the food vendors. It's just one thing after the next. Hanging out in the river with all your buddies, having beers and Jello shots. I mean, good times.
So Alan is one of the Team Awesome members. Is that correct?
He is. Yep. And he was one of the founding fathers of Team Awesome. Team Awesome was it was a group of friends, and we were awesome people. We would, stop what we were doing to help somebody else out at the races. And that's how Team Awesome kind of became. It wasn't pit support or anything like that. It was just a bunch of awesome people that would go around, and, if someone was struggling trying to get a tire off, they would stop what they were doing and go over and help them. And that just grew throughout the sport. And people like Josh wanted, hey, you should, make hats or something like that for all the awesome people. And the next thing I know, I'm, getting Fuel Clothing to make socks and hats and building a website and kind of starting a brand. And that's where Team Awesome came from. And Al had always supported me in that. Because he's, like I said, he's like a brother. And so he supports me in all my races. I don't think Al's ever missed a race, Rich.
Wow.
Even in my go-karting days, he was my mechanic. He was always there as just a bro, and never asked for anything in return, just to have a good time. And so I feel that, to pay it forward, I do the same thing for him at Mountain Vibe, where I come in and I help in any way I can, be a volunteer to help out.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure what the relationship was with that, and I'm glad to hear. I don't do the pay-per-view thing. I rarely watch any other racing because we're just always traveling or putting on our own thing. I do occasionally listen to Wyatt's podcast, and and one of the things is just because some of those drivers I don't know, since I'm not at Ultra 4 races any longer, or King of the Hammers was the only one I really got involved with. I don't know everybody anymore. So it's
tough.
nice to
it's
find
grown.
out. Yeah, it has. Yep.
It's hard to, I have a hard time putting my finger on it, but the best way I've been able to follow along with newcomers into the sport and stuff is I follow the cars. So, for instance, Bailey Cole's now driving a Trent Fab IFS car, and I always just follow that car and who had the car before him, and who, like my brothers, we call it the little tribe car. That car went from my brother to Tom Ways, and then Tom Ways to Mike Boo, and Mike Boo to Ron Prindle. Well, I didn't know who Ron Prindle was,
Right.
so now, right? I mean, I just followed that car, and turns out, like, oh, I know Ron Prindle. He was always helping Mike Boo in the pits, and he actually lived by me, and so like that's the way I follow the new people in the sport.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what else do you have going on?
Man, business is really fun right now. Jason and I are involved in all kinds of neat stuff. And family, living out here in St. George, moved out of California about a year ago, where my brother-in-law, Lance Clifford from Pirate 4x4, he lives out here. My wife and his wife are sisters. And so we are involved in BMX bike racing with the little kids, and I've got a 2 and 3 year old, Sloan and Cole, and they're out there on their Strider bikes, just balanced bikes. They don't even have pedals or anything on them, and they're out doing the course where their niece and nephew, Connor and Callie, are out racing BMX bikes, and Rich, it's so cool to watch them interact. And Connor is a national champion in racing BMX, and it's cool to watch him like coach him along, and look forward, go, and pedal. It just man, there's nothing better. I absolutely just love it.
That's awesome when you can get the kids all involved, and especially the older ones, to teach the younger ones the tricks of the trade that they got, either from coaching or from other racers as well. It's going to be tough for me not racing. Right.
Because I have that again, I have got that competitive mentality, and I think I'm gonna, as much as I can, teach my kids. I'm gonna get my kids into racing go-karts, and get my kids in the little Polaris 170, and we do a ton of recreational wheeling, really involved in trail cleanups and stuff around the St. George area. I had an absolute blast at your kids event out at Trail Hero. I invited a bunch of people out this year to stay with us at our house, and go to that event. So yeah, I'm still really involved in recreation wheeling, and just enjoy it.
That's what life should be about, is enjoying what you're doing. I know that I had to become a promoter because I'm not a very good winner or loser. I'm probably hyper competitive, and I don't even play board games with family because Big Rich comes out.
You cheat at Monopoly?
I don't cheat, but man, I can be ruthless. I mean, everything is about blood. It's I found that it's just a lot easier to keep friends and family around if I am not competitive. If I stay away from, like I said, even simple board games. Just as a racer, the only thing I competed in one of Charlene's events. Shelly wanted to cover it for the magazine, and she goes, "Okay, we're not doing this as anything but media. We don't have to win. We don't have to be, at leaders of the pack or anything like that." And I'm like, okay, we'll try to do that. I'm going to try to take this not serious. As soon as Ryan Miller went past me, it was everybody. I mean, I was like fourth to last to leave. 2 passed me, and then the last one in the pack was Ryan. And Ryan he's hyper competitive. And he just goes blowing by me in what they called the rally Jeep, the little TJ. And I'm like, no way. And I started flooring it. And Shelly, after a couple of miles, Shelly goes, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Stop. We're going to stop for lunch." And I'm like, "We're in the middle of a competition. What do you mean we're stopping for lunch?" But I stopped. And then and then I'm chomping at the bit, oh my God, we're on the first lap. Everybody's on the second lap. And the second lap was part of, the first lap was just to kind of like wear you out all around, Sand Hollow. And then the second lap was all of these technical things that you had to do. You had to drive blindfolded. You had a winch challenge. You had these other things. And I didn't even get to the challenges. I come smoking around this corner again, knowing that I'm way behind and that, we're going to be the last one through all these little challenges.
But you had to beat Miller.
I had to at least see somebody in front of me. And I went into this canyon way too fast, hooked a rock that I'd seen earlier and said, okay, I cannot hit that rock, because if I do, I'm going to tear a tire up. I'm going to blow the rim. Well, I blew the rim. Shattered it. And it was a bead lock, and it was like, okay, great. I don't even have my spare on because I was trying to go light. My Jeep is built for up or for down travel. It has like an inch and a half of up travel.
Yep.
So, you can't go fast in the dunes anyway. I hit that rock, and, Shelly goes afterwards, she was upset because I had taken it too seriously. And I told her, I said, I did warn you, I can't help it. So it's better that I'm a promoter. When people ask me, why did you get into promoting? It was because it was a way to be involved in the sport without having to be that hyper competitive Big Rich.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you did, Rich, because, I can't even count on my hands how many events of yours I've been to. Man, I look back at those events and, meeting cool people like the Websters and hanging out with the Mellos and, watching, Ryan Taylor and those guys, with little funds go compete, and just have so much fun competing, and what your sport helped evolve into, hey, we want to go fast and slow.
Yep.
It was the stepping stones for how big a lot of the racing, not, you had Vora. I remember going to Vora races, and oh man, that had to be, what year was that? 2000? Nah, maybe a little later.
Yeah, I took over in the end of 2002.
Yeah.
So I was 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, and 5. It was 4.5 years.
And seeing, Randy Avery out there in his Jeep, and I just the friends and the people that we met, and the how it sparked the industry. It's we owe a lot of credit to you, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. That's not why I brought that up, but I appreciate it. So, is there anything that you want to talk about we haven't touched bases on?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm just really excited to still be involved in the off-road stuff, and like I said, I'm not getting back in a race car, but I'm trying to help out some people right now. I'm going to be doing with the Team Awesome brand. I'm going to be doing some driver spotlights on some people that I sponsor. There's some young kids growing up right now that are racing in the 170 class that I'm, trying to give some knowledge to, and help them out. Even just, these little kids and big kids too on the same spectrum. They get pretty excited when I give them some swag and some stickers and stuff, because they just love that, they can have a sticker on the side of their car that says awesome.
Exactly.
It puts such a smile on my face. And, for a couple dollars in stickers and a hat or something like that, it's pretty fun. It gives them a little bit more drive. And this month I'm actually showcasing one of my friends who just moved out to St. George, Kevin Stearns, who's now racing 4,400 in his BDS sponsored IFS car. So this year, I'm going to be doing every month a different driver spotlight and promoting them and help promote them, and show, just how awesome some of these people that are involved in Team Awesome really are.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
that is awesome.
Yeah, and it's for fun, and I don't ask anything in return for it. It's just to have fun and get people to get more eyes on some of these cool people, and how much fun they have too.
So what is in the future? Are you going to continue? Well, you said you're going to get your kids into racing if they wish to be doing it. Are you going to get into boating, go out to the lake all the time, or your casual days?
Yeah, my casual days, I really enjoy just the taking the Bronco out. I have an old vintage Bronco. That's my very first vehicle, actually. I bought it when I was 14, and I still own it, and it's pretty robust and fun to go wheeling in. So my afternoons and sometimes the early mornings, consist of loading up babies and going wheeling. Let's see, last Friday I loaded up the kids in the Raptor and took them out to the sand dunes where you were talking about earlier there,
Right.
And ripped around in our Raptor, and yeah, I love it. We like to go down to San Felipe and Baja with the family and stay at our friend's house down there and hang out on the beach, and just I'm trying to live and show my kids the best lives that they can live. Again, it's this accident that happened to me in 2019 really opened my eyes to a lot of other things in life that I'm interested in doing.
Well, excellent.
Yeah.
Casey, I'd like to say thank you for coming on board and discussing your life and the situations that have happened in your life to get you where you are today. And I hope that anybody that listens to this gains some knowledge on, the whole sponsor versus partner, the, living that life to the fullest, and, can gather some information out of that and put their life in the right direction.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Okay. And again, thank you. You take care now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.